Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GBNews.
Hello and welcome, I'm Nana Akua, and for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics that are hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's comedian Abby Roberts and also education specialist and podcaster Tom Buick. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Nana. I'm Karen Roberts. This is your news at 4 o'clock. The stepmother of Arthur Labinjo Hughes has been jailed for life for the 6-year-old's murder. 32-year-old Emma Tustin will serve a minimum of 29 years in prison for starving, poisoning and killing the little boy in June 2020. Tustin refused to enter the dock for the judge's sentencing. Arthur's father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was sentenced to 21 years for manslaughter.
More conventional and horrific child abuse, usually at the hands of parents and carers, is still going on. And as a society, we've got to do more about it. And it needs a much better joined-up approach. I'm afraid it does need more funding. There's been a lot of focus on adult social care, where we need to do lots of things to help older people in later life. But children's social care has not been getting that same focus. And we've now got a lot of vulnerable children and families. We've now got a recent record number, over 80,000 in the care system.
Wales has confirmed its first case of the Omicron COVID variant. The Welsh Government says the case is in the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board area and is linked to international travel. Public Health Wales says there is no evidence of wider community transmission. Meanwhile, NHS England confirmed the acceleration of delivering booster jabs will start no later than December the 13th. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that the Omicron variant is very transmissible, but urged people not to panic. The WHO chief scientist said the majority of cases they'd investigated saw mild symptoms, but it's too early to rule that it's a weaker strain.
It's possible that the Omicron variant is able to overcome and cause infections even in previously vaccinated people. We are seeing that now with a lot of previously vaccinated people who are the first few to be reported with Omicron. However, the fact that they're not getting sick, and again, we have to wait and see, but if they develop only mild illness, that means that the vaccines are still providing protection.
One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officers has told GBNews the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas, but he says people shouldn't change their plans. After 2 attacks in a month in Hartons, police patrols will be operating in town and city centres over the festive period.
I mean, this is the first Christmas in a couple of years where lots of people are going to be together. There's lots of big events going on, and we want people to go and enjoy them. But we also know that the terrorist threat level has been raised to severe after the 2 awful attacks we've seen, one in Essex and one in Liverpool. And we just want the public to be vigilant. We mean that severe means an attack is highly likely, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't go about carrying on their normal business. What it means is that if you're worried about something, if you're suspicious about something, then tell us about it.
The Met Police says it is deeply sorry so many people faced unacceptable scenes of disorder after a damning report described the Euro 2020 final as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA found there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the National Stadium. Long-serving Director of Cricket Martin Moxon, head coach Andrew Gale and the entire coaching team have left Yorkshire Cricket Club. It follows an investigation into claims by Azim Rafiq that he suffered racist abuse while at Yorkshire. Yorkshire Chair Lord Patel says significant change is required at the club to regain trust. The energy regulator, Ofgem, has removed the compensation cap, allowing customers to claim up to £140 for every day they're without power following Storm Arwen. A week on, over 10,000 people are still without electricity in parts of Scotland and the north of England, with the army being drafted in to assist. The industry watchdog is also launching an urgent review into the response of energy network companies in the wake of the storm. Well, that is your news update. I'll be back in half an hour with the latest headlines. Now let's return to Nana Akua.
Now, who the hell talks like this? You lose a by-election by just under 5,000 votes instead of the previous one, which you lost by 19,000. And you tell the media that if there were a similar rise in Labour's share of the vote at a general election, a very large number of Conservative MPs would be losing their seats. And we're on a path back to government. Those are the words of Labour's Daniel Francis regarding the Old Bexley and Sidcup by-election, which they lost. Never has losing sounded so good. Don't you mean that you are on the back foot and heading out of the back door of government? And if you carry on like this, you might never get back in power. Even after the many gaffes by Bojo and his gang. Remember Peppa Pig?
Yesterday I went, as we all must, to Peppa Pig World. I don't know if you've been to Peppa Pig World. Hands up anyone who's been to Peppa Pig World? Not enough.
The allegations of sleaze and now an unconfirmed rumour, which has been bubbling for a while, that rules were broken last year for a Christmas party. The Labour Party still lost, yet they appear to be celebrating a slimmer margin of loss than previously. When you factor in turnout, which was the lowest it's been for some time, at 30%, which says something about the state of trust that we, the public, have in these people, it still wouldn't have made any difference. Louis French, the Tory candidate who won the election with a 51.4% share of the vote, compared with the Labour's 30.8%, said this. This idea that Labour have made some surge ahead is really for the birds. They've actually got about the same vote share as they secured under Jeremy Corbyn in 2017. Keir Starmer couldn't even be bothered to turn up to the by-election. So I'm not really terribly worried about Labour. So how can Labour even consider this any sort of victory? Interestingly, the Liberal Democrats came last with 2.5% share of the vote. They were beaten by Richard Tice's Reform UK party, who came third with a 6.6% share. Now, the by-election took place because of the death of the former MP James Brokenshire and is the first of a series of by-election tests for the Conservatives following a drop in their performance in the national polls. Now, everybody knows that most by-elections are more personality than party motivated. People vote for the people they like. The late Sir David Amess. He was testament to that, having held his seat in Southend West for more than 2 decades. So when a new candidate steps in to fill a sudden void, a candidate that very few people know of, you bet your bottom dollar he'll get fewer votes. It's hardly a victory for the Labour Party. They lost again. Now, I am sick to my back teeth of them trying to jump on the back of any of the so-called Tory sleaze. I want to know, what will they do to curb the cost of living? What are their plans for social care? Frankly, what are their policies? So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. Now, every Friday at 5, we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or a subject matter in my feature, Friday Focus. And this week, what's the real reason behind the fuel price hike? The RAC says the increase in the cost of petrol at the pumps is completely unjustified following a decline in the price of oil. Over 3/4 of us don't speak to our GP about bereavement. The charity Cruise has released the figures during National Grief Awareness Week. I'll be joined by their CEO, Stephen Wibberley. And our great British debate this hour. Should Christmas parties be banned this year? Some health experts have questioned the safety of large gatherings with a new COVID variant in the country, but the Conservative Party chairman, Oliver Dowden, says people should keep calm and carry on. Tell me what you think on everything we're discussing by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk or why not tweet me @gbnews. Right, let's get started. Welcome to my panel, comedian Abby Roberts and education specialist and podcaster Tom Buick. Firstly, hello, welcome. Hello, Tom, welcome to our show.
Yeah, great to be here.
You look very Christmassy, or sort of...
Friday feeling. I'm very on brand, aren't I?
You
Very.
are.
GB News.
Very autumnal, both of you, and I've come from a gig.
Well, you always
A late night gig, it looks like.
Well, you always went the same, Abby.
Must have been a great gig if it's still going.
It was, it's still going strong.
Exactly. So I'm going to start with you, Tom, seeing as
Yes.
it's your first time on the panel on this
Yeah.
show. What do you make of this? Labour appear to be, well, they feel they've had some sort of success. I'm confused.
Well, I'm confused too, and I must give a bit of full disclosure. I was a member of the Labour Party for 27 years. I've been a Labour councillor. I was an advisor to the new Labour government. Feels like eons away now, doesn't it? So
It was.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
There used to be this golden rule, actually, in politics when you stood for election, and it was that single word, humility. And the thing that really disturbed me the most about that quote was the fact that really the candidate is saying, well, we won, when actually he lost. So where's the humility in that? I just think it reminds me actually of back in the 2017 election, the Corbyn era. Jeremy Corbyn lost that election. But because he got more votes, technically, than the Conservatives, he went around the country saying, well, really, we won the election. Then he lost the election a second time in 2019. He went around the country saying to his activist base, oh, well, we lost the election, but we won the argument because the Tory government's now having to put, spending measures in place that a Labour government that had been elected would have done as well. So I think this shows to me that this is a Labour Party that still hasn't yet learned from 3-4 election defeats. It hasn't really yet connected with the British public with a bit of humility, frankly saying, actually, I mean, for me, the message really about this by-election should have been Labour has still got a long way to go, but the party's listening. And that would have been, I think, a message that would have gone down much better on the doorstep than the one we heard there. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very much so. I totally agree with that. I think, worryingly, at the moment, I think the Tories and Labour are so similar.
Do you?
Yes, in their policies, that actually we could be entering, I hope we are, entering a new phase of politics where we drain the swamp. I like to call it, because can you tell I'm a Trump,
think I'm a part
Trump
of
fan? Yeah. Because I do think, as we know, there are lots of new parties like Reform who did very well. I mean, they got a third of the votes.
Well, 6.6%.
6.6 was fantastic, and obviously, and that was Greens and Lib Dem together. They beat them. Obviously, got Reclaim, and I'm a supporter of Reclaim and Lawrence Fox. So we've got and Heritage. We've got these parties, and I think we're seeing grassroots politics. Very exciting times. What happened in America, I think, will start to happen here.
Which
where
is
we
what?
go.
Sorry.
We're sick of mainstream politics. It was ruined before the Brexit vote, essentially, with all the shenanigans in the House of Commons, where who was the Speaker? The bloke, John Bercow, who essentially just declared that he was biased in favour of the Remainers. That is where the rot really started to set in. So I'm very hopeful that the people of this country will be able to have more of a say in politics.
I have to say, I wish I could be as optimistic as that about these two grand old parties, the sort of their monolithic grip they have on power. But actually, when you look at all these by-election results and general election results, did you know since 1945, only, 200 seats in this country, parliamentary seats, have never changed hands. So we've got grandmothers, grandfathers, and indeed our own parents who've been represented by the same party for decades and decades. That said, though, I mean, if I was in Tory HQ command and I looked at Richard Tice vote. By the way, when I stood for the Brexit Party in Dagenham and Rainham in 2019, I got 6.6% of the vote there and came third behind
You went for the Brexit
Labour.
Party?
I did. I stood for the Brexit
Did
Party.
you?
After I resigned
Turncoat.
from the Labour Party, I stood for the Brexit Party because I campaigned for Brexit. Now, you know, if I was in Tory HQ, I'd be worried by Richard Tice's result because if you think about it electorally, you've got now clearly a kind of right-wing party, a centre-right party in the Reform Party that's nibbling away, even in very small percentage terms, at the Tory vote. You've also, of course, got that on the left with the Greens and the Lib Dems that eats into Labour's vote as well. So I think if you were looking forward to the next election, just as, for example, when Nigel Farage took that very brave decision, you know, to stand down 317 Brexit Party candidates at the last election, which arguably opened the door then for Boris Johnson's 80-seat majority. I would be worried, you know, if I was in Tory HQ looking at those figures.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the thing, isn't it? But the Labour Party are quite pleased with it because they didn't lose by as much as they lost with last time.
Ultra low ambition.
Fair enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, well, our reporter Alice Porter managed to catch up with Labour's candidate Daniel Francis just after the result, and he was pretty upbeat.
The result for Labour today is a swing of over 10%. It was a significant challenge to overturn the size majority of 19,000. We've got that down to 4,500, and the swing here would, if that was replicated across the country, would wipe out, you know, a very large number of Conservative MPs and take Labour back on a path to government.
What do you think was the main advantage to you as a party in this by-election? Because, as you say, there has been an increase in Labour votes that from 2019. What do you think was the advantage that you had this time?
Well, not just since 2019, it's the biggest percentage share of the vote we've had here since 2001. And there was a number of issues. You know, in myself, we had an experienced local candidate that was well known in the community, but equally we saw great dissatisfaction with his local Conservative council and the cuts they've made this year. And in recent weeks, time after time, we've heard from residents how dissatisfied they are with the Prime Minister, how he's emboldened with sleaze, and particularly in the last week or two, how incompetent the residents of Old Bexon Sidcup believe the Prime Minister is.
Well, if he thinks that the Prime Minister is so incompetent, how come you couldn't win the seat? I mean, it's just, listening to that, you just think, you're going to insult the other party, that's fine if you're going to say that, but at least show that you've made a difference.
Do you know, I'm a Conservative, a small C Conservative, classical Liberal by nature, so I've just lost most of my comedian friends by saying that, but I don't really care. We haven't had a Conservative government really since Margaret Thatcher left number 10. It's all been this kind of wishy-washy, globalist, third-way socialist, let's all just kind of like be communitarian. That's essentially what's happened. So our politics has become homogenised. And what we need now is to go back to small C. If we want to really, you know, respect the voters, we need a party who, if they call themselves Conservatives, are Conservatives, not communist Conservatives, I like to call them.
Would you say that? I mean, I think the Conservatives are trying to listen to what the people are saying and trying to be sort of more inclusive. But as Trump said, I don't know whether you watched the interview on GBNews.
I did a lot. It was brilliant.
And I mean, of course, what he was saying was that he said he obviously liked Boris Johnson. You can see they get on well anyway, but he was saying that he's probably got a bit more liberal. And I think Boris has. But I suppose it appeases a lot of people, a lot of the Liberals. But then you do appease a level of the Tory party, but then you end up in this sort of place that Labour Party was in and isn't in. I mean, what is Labour doing? Do you know what any of their policies are? I've got a clue.
Well, I certainly don't know what Labour's doing these days because I'm no longer a member. And, of course, the only policy I remember about the last general election coming out of the Labour Party was the free broadband for everybody. Do you remember that?
Oh, I remember
crazy
that.
policy.
That was ridiculous. Free broadband. So that's all we need. That'll do it.
But you know, I think that on the central point about, you know, where is the sweet spot in British politics? I mean, in a sense, Boris Johnson found that in 2019 with him obviously taking down large parts of the Red Wall in the north, a sort of patriotic, actually, you know, communitarian values, I would argue.
Well, what they actually
kind of
said, but they did actually say that we can't get any worse. We've been voting for these Labour people all the time and nothing's changed. So that was part of their reasoning as well.
Well, that's what makes, you know, I think the next generation election fascinating because is it about really people who have made that transfer to the Tory party? It's in their blood, in their DNA, or did they just really lend the vote to Boris Johnson to get Brexit done? But that's where the opportunity, in my view, is for a resurgent Labour Party if it gets it right, which is through the radical centre of British politics, which is about being obviously left and redistributive on things like power, wealth and opportunity, and then a little bit on the right in terms of culture. And that's where I think there's an election
I
winning.
don't think they're going to stop scrabbling. They keep just picking and talking about Tory sleaze and not really understanding that it's almost Westminster bubbly and the people want to talk about the issues that are affecting them directly. Well, listen, stay with us because after the break, it's time for our Great British Debate this hour. The Conservative Party chairman, Oliver Dowden, says that people should keep calm and carry on when it comes to Christmas parties. But with some health experts questioning the safety of large gatherings this Christmas, I'm asking, should they be banned this year? Let me know your thoughts. Send me an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or get in touch via Twitter @gbnews. And there's a poll up right now asking that very question, so cast your vote. But first, let's get your latest weather.
It's time to remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, this weekend is looking fairly changeable, quite a chilly feel to things, especially in the wind, and there will be some rain for many of us. But having said that, it does look like an improving picture into Sunday. Now, for the rest of today, we have these bands of rain just skirting southern counties of England. So those will bring showery outbreaks of rain, quite a lot of cloud, some drizzle or more persistent rain at times here. Meanwhile, another weather front waiting in the wings, and this will bring a mixture of clearer skies, but also some heavy and quite frequent showers. And those could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground of the north. So all in all, there will be quite a lot of rain around through this evening and overnight, and a lot of cloud. That will help keep temperatures up somewhat, so not falling too low. We could just see a touch of frost where skies clear later in the night across more western parts of the country. But for Saturday, quite a cloudy start for many. There will be some breaks in the cloud, allowing a little sunshine to break through here and there. And we have some more persistent rain. Again, this could turn wintry, particularly over higher ground in the north, maybe occasionally to lower levels, but it's unlikely to settle. What we will notice about the feel of the weather tomorrow is how cold it will be in comparison with today, particularly in that brisk northwesterly wind, which will really take the edge off the temperatures. Now, we do see further outbreaks of showery rain through Saturday evening and overnight, but it continues to track its way eastwards. Still a good deal of cloud around, so again, not a particularly cold night for many of us, although with clearer skies in the north and west, there will be some frost here come Sunday morning. And for Sunday itself, as I mentioned, it is generally an improving picture. We will still see further blustery showers across more eastern areas, but drier and brighter skies developing elsewhere. And into next week, it turns unsettled again with some windy conditions on Tuesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So good afternoon. If you just joined me, where have you been? It's time for the Great British Debate this hour. The question, should Christmas parties be cancelled this year? Some health experts are suggesting that they pose a high risk of spreading coronavirus, especially with the new Omicron variant in the country. But the Conservative Party chairman, Oliver Dowden, says people should keep calm and carry on. So, if we do cancel Christmas parties, what impact would this have on hospitality, who once again will be hit quite badly? I'm joined by Alan Miller, a hospitality entrepreneur and a signatory of the Together Declaration, which are a group of organisations rejecting vaccine passports. Alan, welcome. Right, now this new variant isn't great news, not for anyone really, depending on, well, we'll find out more because we'll hopefully be speaking to a doctor about it. But what do you make of this, and what kind of impact do you think this could have?
Well, I don't think it's so much the variant as the reaction and response to it. I mean, as we know from the doctor in South Africa that actually identified it, she is very shocked at British response to it by ministers, because she described it as having seen mild symptoms. And yet there's been a knee-jerk reaction that has imposed restrictions such as mask wearing, which no one's quite clear, is not consistent, and not everywhere, but also what is the efficacy of mask wearing. But then on the one hand, some people say don't have socialisations, but then at the same time, the government are saying we're not saying stop Christmas parties. All of this, because of everything we've seen in the last 20 months, has meant that if you've got a business, on the one hand, you get very concerned, and also the public are on tenterhooks. So many big companies and small ones have had their either experienced cancellations, or they're cancelled all their big events. So they might have smaller get-togethers, but this is really problematic. It's had an enormous impact because this is the time of year generally where people make some of the money back, but particularly after all the lockdowns and the damage, those that have survived, you know, hundreds of thousands of jobs have been lost, tens of thousands of venues. Those that have survived are now being hit with a double whammy. Obviously, venues, but also, you know, hotels and the travel industry. This is really problematic, and it's also very problematic generally for the public. When Chris Whitty has said that we should be living with this like the flu and getting on, he had his initial reaction and response was that this is not too much of a concern. Now we've seen, because we've had so long of this kind of hyper almost hysteria around anything that has the C word, we're seeing that this is having huge impact on the bottom line and on the public, and we really need to get back to normal now. That's why we encourage people to sign the togetherdeclaration.org and have their voices heard.
Think perhaps you might be seeing this, obviously you're seeing this from the eyes of somebody who's in hospitality, but I'll just pick up on a couple of things that you mentioned there. You said that the South African doctor said it seemed to be milder, but we have to bear in mind that South Africa have a much younger population, so they haven't yet seen the major adverse effects, but on the sort of age groups that who are ending up in hospital, it's not been such an awful thing for them. And also you mentioned it being a knee-jerk reaction. What if the government hadn't done this? Because if you were to detach yourself from the hospitality industry and think about what happened at the very beginning when people were complaining that the government didn't respond fast enough, what would you say they should be doing then and should be saying?
Well, I think it's really important to have a balanced view. In fact, the Prime Minister said several times that it was going to be balanced and proportionate. We now have 90% vaccinated. We've now had another 13 million with a third boost. We originally told it was 15 million jabs to freedom. The elderly and the vulnerable, was the original concern. This has gone so far now, and actually we've got millions of people waiting in the NHS for treatment: cancer, heart disease, stroke, sepsis. Lines of people waiting for everything from opticians to the dentist. We have enormous problems to solve. And the way that gets paid for on the one hand is by having our economy open. But the impact and the damage to society and health generally of taking this approach that basically has a very precautionary principle, right? The precautionary principle. And you say, well, we don't know what's going to happen, so therefore we're going to have this knee-jerk reaction. Chris Whitty's initial response was the right one. And like he said, we should live with this like the flu. We've got enormous issues to deal with. Had the government come out and said, well, look, we're going to assess this and evaluate it as it goes down the road. They also said in South Africa they think the vaccines deal with it. We're being told that we're not sure if the vaccines do deal with it, but then go and have a booster. The messaging is all over the place. And quite frankly, it's not just because I've had a whole history in hospitality. I'm talking also as a citizen that wants to see our freedom and our society back. We need to get back together with one another,
Alan,
our families, our friends, loved ones. And that's
Alan,
why we say be together.
Alan, I was going to say, though, but you mentioned the booster, but the booster was something that people were going to do anyway to sort of update their current protection from the original variant before even Delta. So the booster was just a booster and protection because I think the health professionals felt that your immunity would be waning after a period of time. So, you know, and can you blame the government for changing plans when they learn something new? So in this case, it's a new variant. They're not sure yet. Aren't they? I mean, do you not think that Boris Johnson may have struck it correctly in that he's not actually having the knee-jerk reaction that you're saying? They are saying don't cancel things just yet, and just you know go as we are. Isn't that what's happening?
I think
it's the public who are doing the cancelling.
I think he got it wrong because, well, also there's no discipline in the party because you have members of ministers and others making comments about no socialisation. You have to be clear about your messaging on the one hand. But let's be clear, there are going to be many variants. There are often thousands of them. And actually what happens is when they spread wider, particularly with a country that has so much immunity, both from having had COVID and from vaccinations, there's going to be many variants. If we start imposing restrictions every time we know that there's going to be a variant, even though we've had the majority of society vaccinated and we have very big immunity from people who've had COVID, we are never going to get out of this situation. So actually, you can't say on the one hand, we're going to impose these restrictions, it's a real concern, but carry on and have Christmas parties, and then have other people around you saying, well, actually, we're cancelling our parties. It's completely inconsistent. Whatever was done at the start, very little was known at the start. We've now had 20 months. We have a situation, if you look at the numbers in hospitalizations and others, that the numbers have been going down consistently. And, you know, we've got to get a sense of proportion here. People need to now be back to normal. That's what the government should be saying. They should be saying, look, we've had a great success with, you know, the elderly and the vulnerable being vaccinated. Let's get back to normal. Let's be open and robust. If we're constantly living in fear, it's going to be a disaster for society. And we're really encouraging people to get involved and say together, they'll sign the togetherdeclaration.org and have their voices heard with their MPs. Actually, next week, we've got a week of action about that. So people get to let their MPs know. We want to be back to normal. We don't want impositions. The 3 nations have got vaccine passports. There's no need for them. They make no sense. And, you know, similarly with a mask mandate and imposing these things, makes no sense at this juncture.
Well, I mean, some might say, Alan, that the masks do make sense because they would reduce your ability to spread if you did have COVID. But listen, thank you so much for your thoughts. I hear what you're saying, and, you know, I'm sure a lot of people agree with you. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Alan Miller. He's also a signatory for the Together Declaration. So what do you think? Do you think that it's the right move? Is Boris Johnson doing the right thing? He said that just go on as normal, as if, and just, you know, we're sort of carrying on. But what do you think? Are you going to cancel your party? Are you contemplating whether you want to actually go to your Christmas party? Well, after the break, we'll continue with our Great British Debate. And I'm asking you this, should Christmas parties be cancelled this year? I'll also be talking to my panel about that. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. The stepmother of Arthur Lavinjo Hughes has been jailed for life for the 6-year-old's murder. 32-year-old Emma Tustin will serve a minimum of 29 years in prison for starving, poisoning and killing the little boy in June 2020. Arthur's father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was sentenced to 21 years for manslaughter. Mr Justice Mark Wall, QC, said it was without doubt one of the most distressing and disturbing cases he'd ever had to deal with. Wales has confirmed its first case of the Omicron COVID variant. The Welsh Government says the case is in the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board area. Meanwhile, NHS England confirmed the acceleration of delivering booster jabs will start no later than December the 13th. The World Health Organization has warned that the Omicron variant is very transmissible, but urged people not to panic. Speaking earlier, the WHO chief scientist said the majority of cases they'd investigated saw mild symptoms, but it's too early to rule it a weaker strain. One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officers has told GB News the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas. After 2 attacks in a month, enhanced police patrols will be operating in town and city centres over the festive period. The Met Police says it's deeply sorry so many people faced unacceptable scenes of disorder after a damning report described the Euro 2020 final as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA found there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the National Stadium. I'll be back at the top of the hour with a full news update.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So it's back to our great British debate this hour, and I'm asking, should Christmas parties be cancelled? As scientists continue to research the risk the new Omicron coronavirus variant poses here in the UK, many have warned about large gatherings this Christmas. But the government are keen to stress we should carry on as normal when it comes to our Christmas party plans. So to get the scientific perspective, I'm joined by Dr. Simon Clark, a microbiologist at the University of Reading. So, Simon, first of all, welcome to the programme. What sort of risks do Christmas parties pose?
Well, potentially infected people to mix with uninfected people, and therefore there is a risk of transmission. You know, a Christmas party is no different, really, in terms of that risk than, say, a well-attended funeral wake. So really, there's nothing special about Christmas parties. They're just like any other gathering.
But with this new variant, so we're all worried about this variant, could it be that we're acting too soon? And in actual fact, because we're hearing that it's not so, well, they haven't found that it's as deadly at the moment, although it has affected mostly younger people. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah, there's still an awful lot to learn about how it behaves and what threat it poses to us. And I really do mean an awful lot to learn. But I think that the saviour, if you like, for Christmas parties and also New Year's, I just don't think the numbers will be here for it to cause us a problem by the time we reach Christmas and New Year. Maybe in January, February, but the numbers are just too low at the moment. We've got travel restrictions as well that are slowing down the arrival of it into the country, if not necessarily blocking it altogether. So those numbers will go up in time if the South African experience is anything to go by, but I don't expect them to explode anytime soon.
Now, I want to ask you about this thing, because what if, and this is what I'm thinking, if this Omicron is not as deadly as the Delta variant, surely you actually want it to overtake the Delta variant, because it's more transmissible. They're in competition, these viruses. It will compete, it will win, and then we'll have Omicron. Could this almost be the ending of the pandemic if we have something that comes out that is more competitive and that outcompetes the deadly version of itself?
Well, that's one way of looking at it. The idea that just because it's less deadly doesn't mean it's deadly at all is, I don't see how that adds up. All the direction for this virus has been to become more transmissible and or more deadly. Why it would suddenly change direction and become inert overnight, I don't quite understand. That isn't really actually what happens. If you've got a more transmissible bug, it doesn't matter what it is, it can cause a bigger problem than a less transmissible bug because it infects more people.
But what if it doesn't have the problem, as I understand it, listening to COVID-19, is that it can create multi-organ failure. So you end up with it getting involved with this, in the blood and all that kind of thing. You end up with blood clots. What if this variant doesn't do that and it just acts more like a flu virus? Would that not be a better outcome?
Well, it's more, if it does that, that's more likely to be the result of the vaccine rather than any innate ability of the virus, because it's actually your body that causes that overreaction and multi-organ failure when your immune system overreacts.
But I thought there was also a gene as well, a COVID gene that people have that means that they're... I won't get myself confused in all this because you're much cleverer than me. But is it true that there is a gene? I mean, I was reading about it, about the COVID gene, that if you have that gene, you're more susceptible to the adverse effects because that gene does something with the lungs. And is that right? Am I going to be right?
It's entirely possible, and in fact likely, that there are host genetic effects on this, but that's not going to be affected by any change in the virus. You're going to either have it or you're not.
Okay. Well, listen, Dr. Simon Clarke, thank you so much for joining us. He's a microbiologist at the University of Reading. Right, let me throw this out to my panel and get their thoughts. Abby and also Tom. Start with you, Abby.
Well, I don't think we're going far enough. I think we should ban Christmas. I think we should ban Easter. I think we should... In fact, no tinsel. I think you should brick up your chimney so Santa can't get down. I think you should never kiss anyone again, never hold hands, never be in a group of people, and just literally cover yourself in a glass box and walk around like this. And fantastic. What a great society we'll build for ourselves. Happy Christmas, everyone.
Yeah. Well, now we know who the Grinch is on the panel. There's going to be no mistletoe.
Of course, I was being sarcastic.
Of course. But you're
reaching for a snog in a minute. Careful.
Look, I mean, just listening to that there, I just think as a country and as a scientific community and our politicians, we've got ourselves into a real muddle over what is still obviously a public health challenge. I accept that. But surely it goes back to the original objective, going right back to March 2020. Are we trying to slow the spread from a variant that is so concerning that potentially it's going to kill Granny? Is it about, buying enough time, therefore, to do that? Or are we in, as you're kind of hinting, Nana, in the endemic stage, as they describe it, of this pandemic? Just like 100 years ago, we had Spanish flu, didn't we? That went through 3 or 4 waves. And then we still, even today, base our vaccines for influenza shots on that Spanish flu. So I'm just confused now as to which part of that story we're in from the point of managing the pandemic.
I'm glad you said that, because that's what I was alluding to when I was talking to him, but you did it so much better than me. Because I'm thinking, are we actually trying to stop death and people dying, or are we in a situation where you get an illness that is unlikely to kill you, but it's okay because just like we let the flu rip, we don't really want it to, not the flu, but someone gets a cold, they come into work, even though they shouldn't. I don't want them to. But are we at that stage with, is this the mutation that has occurred?
Yeah, totally. And a lot of viruses, I mean, swine flu, 2 years, which is what it's been, well, nearly 2 years, is actually the path that a virus will take. So now we are at an endemic stage. And also, there are many treatments other than the vaccines, which I have to just put forward, early treatments. The thing you have to worry about is your lungs. There are treatments where, if you take them, combination therapy for your lungs, it wipes out locally the infection in your lungs.
But
that's what we should be. But that's what we should also be talking about, because
it's a bit of a lottery as well. I think that some places might not be doing the same treatments. And
because they're not, because the vaccines are being pushed too hard
as well. We need to.
But at the start of the pandemic, do you remember those down the street press conferences? This is when we first met Jonathan Van Tam and Chris Whitty.
Chris Rea, I thought you were going to say.
Exactly.
Well, it's over for Christmas.
But, you know, those wonderful PowerPoint presentations with the data charts, with the spreadsheets. In other words, what they were doing was they were taking the British public on a journey to explain the scientific data behind the public health decisions that were being made. Now all you're hearing is conjecture and speculation. You know, we need to see what's coming out of the World Health Organization, what's coming out of South Africa. But if the data isn't there, I don't understand this precautionary principle of, frankly, going through the performative nature of saying, well, mask mandates are back in England, even though we've had them in Scotland and Wales, but yet we've seen cases above those in England. So we've got that data to look at. It just all feels like it is, you know, as Alan Miller said, it's performative. And it's not really certainly helping the economy when it's something like nearly £1 billion at Christmas that employers spend £40 per head on their employees.
So should we have Christmas parties then?
Absolutely. Get buying your mistletoe.
Because it's the one time of the year when the tables get turned on the bosses and the David Brents of this world come out and get totally embarrassing with their
dad dancing.
Which is usually me, by the way.
Well, let's find out what the viewers are saying, because you've also been getting in touch with your thoughts via email and on Twitter. Simon says, if you want to go out and party, then do it. Don't wait to be asked, to be told what to do or what is right for you. Adrian says, sadly, our office Crimbo party has been cancelled. Really? For the second year in a row? Oh, that's awful. I'm so sorry. No, that's a shame, isn't it? I should be going out. I would go out even on my own if I had to. Right, Bruce says, that is entirely 100% up to the individuals involved. Personal responsibility in a free society. It is certainly nothing whatsoever to do with government. Danny says we need to learn to live with the virus. I think we are, aren't we? We have high vaccination levels and effective treatments are available. Just what you said, Abby. Rob says, are we doing this for every new variant? It's winter. Cases will naturally rise. Get on with life. Party away. Matt says, people who say yes clearly haven't been invited to a party this year.
So true.
We also have a Twitter poll up at the moment that's asking you the very question that should Christmas parties be cancelled? And currently 91% of you say no. Who are the 9% that are the Scrooges? Where are you? Wow. We shouldn't cancel Christmas parties at all. Well, do you know, I want to have a different view, but I can't, because I just feel that, look, you know, there comes a point. I'm pro-vaccination. I'm pro all the different, you know, the mask wearing, whatever it takes.
I haven't had the vaccine.
You haven't had the vaccine.
No.
Okay, fine. Well, you know, I think you know, if you could, you know, if you should, I think you should. But it's up to you. It's totally your choice.
Well, it's up to me at the moment. But if we go down Austria and Germany,
I'm going
to take us down the the controversial route. Oliver Dowden, as well as saying get on with life, was also dangling Damocles' sword over our head, saying, if you don't have the booster, you may be mandated to have vaccines.
Did he say that?
Terrible! Yeah, happy Christmas.
Did he actually
say everyone?
Did he say
yeah, he did. He did.
He suggested that. I mean, again, it's back to this, what is Omicron really being used for? Is it just a cloak to really drive what the government wants to see, which is take-up of the booster? They're even talking now about a fourth jab, aren't they, in the spring of next year. But look, that poll there, Nana, that really restores 91%. My faith in the great British public.
I agree.
91% when I get on the parties. And in fact, it was also reassuring this week to see that poll from YouGov, which suggests that over 60% don't want to see restrictions go back to shutting down restaurants, shutting down theatres, which is quite heartening to see, because I think for a long time, actually, throughout this crisis, we have seen the polls, actually, the public suggest they want to see these restrictions in place.
Well, you see, the other
including
thing
a quarter that said they wanted
the
a
other
forever
thing,
lockdown.
the other thing that I'm concerned about, and I think we should do a bit more of a detailed show on it, is this whole vaccine business. Now, I'm happy, like I said, I'm totally pro-vaccine. I think you're mad if you don't do it, but Abby, you're mad anyway, so that's fine. But I think, with what's out there, yes, it's probably a good idea. But what worries me is instead of actually trying to find a vaccine that will prevent transmission, they seem to be saying, OK, you have another one next year, next year, next year. So for me, it now feels like an industry is evolving.
Big pharma.
Where a lot of people... Now, listen, I believe that you should make money if you've produced something that is saving lives. I don't see any problem with that. But what I'd like to see is them actually focus on trying to create a vaccine that stops the transmission.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, then would you take it then? If it stops transmission, would you take it?
In my view, the rollout was way too fast. And we're going to see it happen with swine flu. And it's going to happen now.
Let's not answer the question.
Would I take it?
Would you take it if it stopped transmission? So you catch it, you cannot catch COVID. If they could create something like that. Like normal vaccines, the highest percentage, you're not going to be able to transmit it or pass it on.
Even with a flu vaccine, it's only 30%
but if
efficacy.
It could, but if the efficacy was high?
No, I don't think I would.
Still not?
No.
Okay. Well, I just thought no. Because then we'd wipe it out. Listen, after the break, I'll be finding out more about the new scheme giving GPs more access to patients who've lost a loved one. The CEO of bereavement charity Cruise will join me. But first, let's get an update with your weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, this weekend is looking fairly changeable, quite a chilly feel to things, especially in the wind, and there will be some rain for many of us. But having said that, it does look like an improving picture into Sunday. Now, for the rest of today, we have these bands of rain just skirting southern counties of England. So those will bring showery outbreaks of rain, quite a lot of cloud, some drizzle or more persistent rain at times here. Meanwhile, another weather front waiting in the wings, and this will bring a mixture of clearer skies, but also some heavy and quite frequent showers. And those could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground of the north. So all in all, there will be quite a lot of rain around through this evening and overnight, and a lot of cloud. That will help keep temperatures up somewhat, so not falling too low. We could just see a touch of frost where skies clear later in the night across more western parts of the country. But for Saturday, quite a cloudy start for many. There will be some breaks in the cloud, allowing a little sunshine to break through here and there. And we have some more persistent rain. Again, this could turn wintry, particularly over higher ground in the north. Maybe occasionally to lower levels, but it's unlikely to settle. What we will notice about the feel of the weather tomorrow is how cold it will be in comparison with today, particularly in that brisk northwesterly wind, which will really take the edge off the temperatures. Now, we do see further outbreaks of showery rain through Saturday evening and overnight, but it continues to track its way eastwards. Still a good deal of cloud around, so again, not a particularly cold night for many of us, although with clearer skies in the north and west, there will be some frost here come Sunday morning. And for Sunday itself, as I mentioned, it is generally an improving picture. We will still see further blustery showers across more eastern areas, but drier and brighter skies developing elsewhere. And into next week, it turns unsettled again with some windy conditions on Tuesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, the bereavement charity Cruise has joined up with GPs to improve the support on offer for those of us who've lost loved ones. Now, figures released this week for National Grief Awareness show that 3/4 of us have never spoken to a GP about loss. So I'm joined in the studio by the CEO of Cruise, Stephen Wibberley. Stephen, welcome to the programme. Why do you think so many of us don't use our GPs when it comes to loss?
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for having me here. I think the main problem is people just don't like talking about death and bereavement. In this country, we've got a real taboo around talking around death, which, given the awful impact of the pandemic over the past 18 months, is a bit strange. It's been on the news every night, but people, when they've been bereaved themselves or when they're talking to people who've been bereaved, still don't open up about it.
You see, but no one wants to think about themselves not being here, you see, so that's why if I hear someone talking about it on the radio, I think, oh, God, I don't want to hear that. And then, you know, obviously the other side of it is that there are those who have lost loved ones who are grieving, and it's difficult to know what to do.
It is sometimes difficult to know what to do, but, you know, death is something that's going to happen to all of us, and bereavement is going to happen, something that's going to happen to almost all of us. So there isn't any reason to ignore talking about it. And for anyone that's been bereaved, actually having people coming up, having friends, work colleagues coming up and just saying, really sorry to hear about your loss, is there anything I can do to help? It's just so important rather than just ignoring the issue.
But sometimes people don't want that either. So it's really, so I'm the sort of person where I wouldn't want someone sort of focusing their attention on me and keep, because that would make me feel worse in a way. So that, I think that's what people are afraid of.
Yeah. And clearly everyone deals with their grief differently. We say it's universal, but it's also unique. But what we find is most people do want to talk about it when they feel comfortable doing so. But going up to someone just saying, sorry to hear about it, is there anything I can do to help? And if someone doesn't want to talk about it then, that's fine, but they know you're there again in the future if they want to talk about it later.
Why should people go to their GPs, though? Because GPs, first of all, there's this whole lack of face-to-face. They don't want to do a lot of that. Some GPs are great, but others have, turned it into a more online business, which is, fine. But then also you always hear about GPs being inundated, so you don't want to waste their time if you're going through grief. Why do you think people don't go to GPs for this?
So first of all, I don't think it's wasting GP's time. I think lots of people who are really struggling with their grief do have physical health problems, mental health problems that might be linked to their bereavement. And certainly when we've talked to people who have been bereaved, for example, on our social media, a lot of them are talking to their GPs already, but aren't getting very good support and aren't getting that empathy, that compassion that they so desperately need from their GPs. And so the programme we've launched yesterday with the Royal College of General Practitioners is to help inform GPs about the best ways of talking with a bereaved person, to help them and to offer further support if that's what's needed.
So this particular programme is designed to talk to GPs and kind of show them how to deal with people who come to them with issues of grief. Yeah. And your awareness is to them. Yeah. What about to people who are going through this bereavement and grief? Yeah. How can they get in touch with you and what kind of support can you offer them?
So people can get in touch with Cruise by going to our website, cruise.org.uk, or phoning our national helpline. And we can provide support to bereaved people in a range of different ways. We've got some great resources, great videos on our website that help normalise grief, help people understand what they're going through is actually quite normal and what most bereaved people will go through. And then if people do need a bit more support, they can call the helpline, have web chat, or talk to one of our volunteers. We've got an incredible team of 4,000 volunteers around the country who can support people over a number of weeks, helping talk through their grief, to help them come to terms with it, understand it that bit more.
Very difficult. Just remind us again of the website that people can go to if they want to...
So it's cruse, spelled cruse.org.uk.
Well, listen, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you very much. That's Stephen Wimberley. He's the CEO of Cruise. If you've just joined me, welcome aboard. This is GB News. I'm Nana Akua. We've got so much still to come in the next hour. Hello, I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming up in this next hour, we're fast approaching 5 o'clock. Me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. The show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course, it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. Joining me today is fabulous comedian Abby Roberts and also education specialist and podcaster Tom Buick. Still to come each Friday at 5, we'll put the spotlight on a particular guest or subject matter in my Friday Focus. And this week, it's what's the real reason behind the fuel price hike. The RAC says the increase in the cost of petrol at the pumps is completely unjustified and following a decline in the price of oil. The Great British Debate this hour. Back in August, the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan. And one Afghan interpreter who worked for the British Army was one of the thousands who escaped to the UK as a refugee. Now, after 4 months in hotels, he's been welcomed into the family of a Scottish lady who's given him a lifeline. I'll speak to him and ask you, would you give a refugee a home? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews. But first, let's get your latest headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. This is your news at 5 o'clock. The stepmother of Arthur Labinjo Hughes has been jailed for life for the 6-year-old's murder. 32-year-old Emma Tustin will serve a minimum of 29 years in prison for starving, poisoning and killing the little boy in June 2020. Tustin refused to enter the dock for the judge's sentencing. Arthur's father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was sentenced to 21 years for manslaughter. Former Children and Families Minister Tim Loughton told GB News that more needs to be done to protect children.
More conventional and horrific child abuse, usually at the hands of parents and carers, is still going on. And as a society, we've got to do more about it. And it needs a much better joined up approach. I'm afraid it does need more funding. There's been a lot of focus on adult social care, where we need to do lots of things to help older people in later life. But children's social care has not been getting that same focus. And we've now got a lot of vulnerable children and families. We've now got a recent record number, over 80,000 in the care system.
Wales has confirmed its first case of the Omicron COVID variant. The Welsh Government says the case is in the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board area and is linked to international travel. Public Health Wales says there is no evidence of wider community transmission. Meanwhile, NHS England say the acceleration of delivering booster jabs will start no later than December the 13th. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that the Omicron variant is very transmissible, but urged people not to panic. The WHO chief scientist said the majority of cases they'd investigated saw mild symptoms, but it's too early to rule that it's a weaker strain.
It's possible that the Omicron variant is able to overcome and cause infections even in previously vaccinated people. We are seeing that now with a lot of previously vaccinated people who are the first few to be reported with Omicron. However, the fact that they're not getting sick, and again, we have to wait and see, but if they develop only mild illness, that means that the vaccines are still providing protection.
One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officers has told GB News the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas. But he says people shouldn't change their plans. After 2 attacks in a month, enhanced police patrols will be operating in town and city centres over the festive period.
I mean, this is the first Christmas in a couple of years where lots of people are going to be together. There's lots of big events going on, and we want people to go and enjoy them. But we also know that the terrorist threat level has been raised to severe after the two awful attacks we've seen, one in Essex and one in Liverpool. And we just want the public to be vigilant. We mean that severe means an attack is highly likely, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't go about carrying on their normal business. What it means is that if you're worried about something, if you're suspicious about something, then tell us about it.
The Met Police says it is deeply sorry so many people faced unacceptable scenes of disorder after a damning report described the Euro 2020 final as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA found there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the National Stadium. Long-serving Director of Cricket Martin Moxon, head coach Andrew Gale and the entire coaching team have left Yorkshire Cricket Club. It follows an investigation into claims by Azim Rafiq that he suffered racist abuse while at Yorkshire. Yorkshire Chair Lord Patel says significant change is required at the club to regain trust. The energy regulator Ofgem has removed the compensation cap, allowing customers to claim up to £140 for every day that they're without power following Storm Arwen. A week on, over 10,000 people are still without electricity in parts of Scotland and the north of England, with the army being drafted in to assist. The industry watchdog is also launching an urgent review into the response of energy network companies in the wake of the storm. I'll bring you the latest headlines in half an hour's time. Until then, it's back to Nana Akua.
Welcome. If you've just joined me, I'm Nana Akua. Now, if you're driving on the roads across the UK, it's probably costing you a lot more than it was in the summer. I know for sure, because when I filled up my car the other day, the fuel cost me about £15 more than it normally does. I know, ridiculous. Fuel prices have been rising since June, when they were at a considerably low price. Remember that? 107p per litre? Wasn't that? Those were the days. And 112 for diesel. Since then, both E10 petrol and diesel have hit their all-time record highs, nearing £1.50 per litre. Oh, yes. Yes, well, the RAC says that many retailers are now profiteering with the reduction in the wholesale price of oil, but no drop, surprise, surprise, in the price at the pump. I'm joined by the founder of the Fair Fuel UK campaign, Howard Cox. Howard, welcome to the programme.
Hello.
Right, so talk to me then. How is it that the prices are still so high?
Well, that's a good question. It's $1 million question. No one knows why, because wholesale prices have come down something like in the last couple of weeks by 8%, and yet pump prices have gone up by 4%. It makes no sense. I mean, the fuel supply chain themselves have now hit all new lows in what we call opportunistic profiteering. And I just can't understand why the government's allowing to do it. But maybe it's because they're getting an extra £2 billion of VAT because of the higher fuel prices. And that's why our campaign is calling for an inquiry by the CMA, the Competitions and Market Authority, and we need to introduce a body, a pricing watchdog. Gas, electricity and water all have these watchdogs to, you know...
Well, don't we have them, though? Or do we not have it in petrol? Because
no,
we've got Ofgem for the fuel, for gas at home.
No, nothing whatsoever for petrol and diesel. 37 million drivers in this country, and they don't have any consumer protection. And that's what we're calling for. And we're calling for a body called Pump Watch. And I thank GB News for allowing me to say that.
I mean... Look, this is what we expect them to do, even with a sort of an overseeing body like you've got Ofgem. The prices still tend to go up even when the wholesale prices go down. They don't necessarily follow. So what power does the government actually have to force these companies to bring down their prices?
That's a good question, but the simple thing is we don't want retailers and the fuel supply chain to reduce their profits. They need to keep their profits high because otherwise they won't be supplying the product. The simple thing is what people are calling for is transparency. When oil goes up, as you know, pump prices go up immediately. It's called the rocket effect. And when they come down, oil prices, they come down like a feather and not by the right amount. What we're calling for is some sort of, to understand the pricing process. When Mrs. Bloggs drives a little Peugeot 205 into the garage and fills up with diesel, and she's heard that the oil's gone up, she wants to know that she's not being ripped off. We're talking about fair and transparent pricing.
Could this also be, I mean, look, I don't know how much power and control the government would actually have on this, actually. Wouldn't have that much at all, would they? Because surely it's a competition, isn't it? I mean, they're kind of a cartel, I suppose, all these oil companies, but ultimately it's a competition, so they are working together as a cartel and keeping the prices high. What power?
Well, as we know, 60% of what goes into tank goes to the government anyway.
So why it's not in their interest then for the price to go down, is it?
Well, especially with the VAT on top on the commercial part of it. In fact, the whole of everything you put into your tank. No, what the government can do is to have an inquiry to show, if they can, to everyone, the pricing fairness. It's not fair, and we're looking at something like 2 years ago. The wholesale price was X. It is now X plus about 1%. The pump prices were about Y 2 years ago. They're now 21p more. And that's equivalent to £10 per... You mentioned you filling up, it's cost you £15.
It is, yeah, £15.
Yeah, we're looking at £10 to £15 more for an average family car.
So on the screen here, we've got the price of where it was in November, I think, 2019. And the difference of the increase in the prices.
Well, this is actually a difference. This is gross profit margins. Yeah. We're looking at that. And as you can see, even if we take away the costs, and they do have costs like distribution costs and there's administration costs, you take those away, look at what's happened. The first column is petrol and diesel for 2019. If we move across to the third column, that's in October. And look at this big jump we've had now to December in terms of profitability. We're looking at 150% increase in profitability. And they're shameless, and they're greedy and they're gutless. They will not show us why this is happening, and they're not passing these wholesale falls onto hard-pressed motorists. And don't forget, UK motorists are still the highest taxed in the world.
I mean, it just seems a bit ridiculous. Do you think that perhaps part of this is, if we consider the government's agenda, they're talking about the electric cars and things, the part of it is, well, why shouldn't they take the money from, profiteer a bit? Because obviously they take a large cut out of that. If the price is high, they'll take more. And then it's slightly pushing us all into contemplating an electric car.
Well, that's right. We've been down this avenue before, and I heard talking with Liam earlier on at lunchtime about electric vehicles. They're too expensive, and we're being forced into one modal transport. There are other ways of reducing emissions. Every single driver wants to lower emissions, but being forced into one modal transport, you made the point just now, what can the government do regarding these prices? Well, this is supposed to be a government that doesn't interfere in markets, correct? What we're seeing, though, is that in 2030, they're telling us we can't buy new diesel and petrol cars. And that wasn't in any manifesto committed in 2019. And I'm a One Nation Tory, but I'll never vote for them again because I don't trust them, because we didn't vote for a Green government.
But who said the others won't do the same? And they're all going to do the same, aren't they, to try and sort of push an agenda, which is this green agenda, pushing us into these electric cars, keeping the price of fuel high, so we'll start to contemplate the alternative. Why would they bring the prices or work together to create this regulator that you're speaking of?
Well, the simple fact is that, as you know, when you mentioned you report on inflation, it's gone up. Usually the next line is it's because of fuel prices. And it's in the interest of the government that the economy, the impact of high fuel prices and high taxation impacts on GDP and impacts on inflation, impacts on jobs, business investment. And with the HGV driver shortages, for example, if we actually reduce the actual petrol, something like the 2 billion that the extra VAT is equivalent to 6p reduction in fuel duty. They could do that now, and that could go and help HGV drivers actually employ more people, train them, and move to cleaner vehicles. It's simple. It's in their remit. They won't do it at the moment, and we don't know why. And most of the backbench MPs that I talk to agree with what we're trying to do.
Well, if we keep highlighting it, maybe they'll start to feel the pressure and then start to make a bit of a change. Right, well, let's find out what's actually happening at the pumps, because our reporter Amelia Harper has been asking people there the impact that high fuel prices are having on them.
When it does affect you, when you put the nozzle in the car and then you go and fill up, it's like, oh my God, it's like a second mortgage. It's like, I only fill up the car. So, yeah, it's just, you do notice it and think it's a massive increase in such a short space of time, but yeah.
Because I'm a key worker, so I am all the time driving. Driving is my job. But when it comes actually to driving itself, I find that I'm quite lucky because my company does give us fuel allowance back. So although we are paying for it from our own pocket as such each week, at the end of the month, when we then get our wage packet, we do get so much back.
I think it's making it really difficult for everybody. A lot of people are really struggling. People who have long journeys are really struggling. To fill your tank now, it's insane.
I believe that it's unnecessarily high because there's not a fuel shortage. So I don't understand why.
Yeah, I mean, as a student, it definitely is harder, finding the money to put fuel in my car. Commuting to St Albans and back every day obviously does take quite a lot of fuel. It used to take me £30 to fill up my 1.2 litre car, and it now takes me £50, which is quite a big jump from what it was before.
That's it. That's exactly what I was saying. She's the same. We must have a very similar car. I mean, that's what people are saying. That's what people are actually saying at the pumps, because we like to deal with things that actually affect real people. And the ricochet of these prices mean that it's becoming difficult, and we as a public are beginning to actually say, hold on a minute, that's too much.
Well, as you saw on your particular broadcast just now, it's hitting low-income people. People have to go to work. They've got no choice. And this is ridiculous. And as I say, it's in the government's remit to solve this, or certainly alleviate the pressure by reducing fuel duty. If they dropped it by 3p, that actually for something like a 50-litre car, you're looking at £1.50 every time you fill up. That is a saving, and that can go back into spending, which means it goes back into the economy, which gives more tax revenue to the government. I've worked with the Centre of Economic Business Research for the last 11 years on this, and they've proven that low fuel prices is good for the economy and good for GDP growth. Why isn't the government seeing that?
When you fill up your car, you must be seething.
Yes, and I drive a hybrid.
So you drive a hybrid?
Yes, yeah, and I drive a hybrid, but I actually moved to a hybrid to help the environment, I thought I was doing, and I moved from a diesel, which was doing 70 miles to the gallon. My hybrid, yes, it's lovely what's coming out of the exhaust, it's all nice and clean, thank you very much, but it's 30 miles to the gallon. So I'm spending more money for the environment, to clean the environment up, in the eyes of this government.
And that means that basically it's half fuel and half electric, and it sort of powers itself to sort of build electricity.
When you move slow in urban areas that say 20 mile an hour, it becomes an electric vehicle, so it doesn't use the diesel, the petrol engine. But it's a fabulous car. I love the car very much, but it's costing more money than it was with a diesel.
This is the thing, isn't it? I mean, diesel's not a great fuel in terms of emissions, but you could sort of go further, and they started to pitch it. Initially, it was pitched as the one where you're going to get the most value for money, and now, many instances, it's not really much better value at all.
But modern diesels are clean. The Euro 6 diesels, and this is, I'm actually backed by the Road Haulage Association and the Freight Transport Association, which is now called Logistics UK. In the last 10 years, they've reduced emissions by 50% with the cleaner diesel engines. But that's not mentioned by the BBC or Sky News.
Why can't they think of it? What about biodiesel? That's my thing. I've been thinking about biodiesel, because you can use chip fat for that, can't you? I mean, that's leftover oil. You put it through the processing, and then I think the emission is water, isn't it? It gives off water.
Well, a lot of it, most of it is. But you're dead right. Why isn't the government looking at this? And there's also fuel catalysts available now. Yeah. You put fuel catalysts in. It's a legal requirement in a state of Texas for a fuel catalyst to be actually delivered in bulk to garage forecourt. So when you fill up, you've got a fuel catalyst in your tank. And what does that do? 50% reduction in emissions and 10% improvement in fuel economy. It's a win-win. Why isn't the government looking at this?
Instead of forcing us to scrap perfectly decent cars, which could continue if you could have a fuel that was much cleaner. And there are other fuels that we could be considering using our existing infrastructure and existing cars, rather than ripping out the infrastructure, forcing everybody to have a charger point, and all this nonsense, and then keeping those fuel prices high.
Spot on. You've said it. I couldn't have said it any better. I mean, that's exactly the point. What's going on in the government's myopic view of actually the future of road user transport? And that's the thing. There isn't a long-term road user strategy at the moment, and that's what we're calling for too.
Well, listen, Howard, it's been a pleasure talking to you. That's really good and really informative. Howard Cox, he's the founder of Fair Fuel UK. Right, a government spokesperson said this: fuel prices are increasing in countries across the world, and this is not an issue unique to the UK. We've provided £4.2 billion of support to help people with the cost of living, including effectively cutting taxes for workers on universal credit, providing £500 million of targeted support for the most vulnerable families, and freezing fuel duty for the 12th year in a row. Well, that's what they had to say. Coming up, it's the Great British Debate this hour. Today, I'm asking, would you give a refugee a home? A woman in Scotland has done just that. offering to support an Afghan interpreter who came to the UK when the Taliban retook control of the country. I'll speak with him next, but first, it's the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, this weekend is looking fairly changeable, quite a chilly feel to things, especially in the wind, and there will be some rain for many of us. But having said that, it does look like an improving picture into Sunday. Now, for the rest of today, we have these bands of rain just skirting southern counties of England. So those will bring showery outbreaks of rain, quite a lot of cloud, some drizzle or more persistent rain at times here. Meanwhile, another weather front waiting in the wings, and this will bring a mixture of clearer skies, but also some heavy and quite frequent showers. And those could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground of the north. So all in all, there will be quite a lot of rain around through this evening and overnight, and a lot of cloud. That will help keep temperatures up somewhat, so not falling too low. We could just see a touch of frost where skies clear later in the night across more western parts of the country. But for Saturday, quite a cloudy start for many. There will be some breaks in the cloud, allowing a little sunshine to break through here and there. And we have some more persistent rain. Again, this could turn wintry, particularly over higher ground in the north, maybe occasionally to lower levels, but it's unlikely to settle. What we will notice about the feel of the weather tomorrow is how cold it will be in comparison with today, particularly in that brisk northwesterly wind, which will really take the edge off the temperatures. Now, we do see further outbreaks of showery rain through Saturday evening and overnight, but it continues to track its way eastward. Still a good deal of cloud around, so again, not a particularly cold night for many of us, although with clearer skies in the north and west, there will be some frost here come Sunday morning. And for Sunday itself, as I mentioned, it is generally an improving picture. We will still see further blustery showers across more eastern areas, but drier and brighter skies developing elsewhere. And into next week, it turns unsettled again with some windy conditions on Tuesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join us for the political correction. We're here every Sunday to correct politics and put you, the people, back in charge.
We talk about all areas of the United Kingdom, including Northern Ireland.
Our debate goes way beyond the Westminster Village. It's about the real country. It's about your opinion. So please, we want you to tell us what you think.
This is the political correction.
Every Sunday morning from 10 a.m. here on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Good afternoon. Right, let's turn our attention to the great British debate this hour. I'm asking, would you give a refugee a home? Back in August, the Taliban retook control of Afghanistan. Thousands of people made their way to Kabul airport trying to find a flight out of the country. Remember that? One of those was Afghan interpreter Burhan Vesal. Now, after spending days in hiding over fear for his life, he managed to board a plane to the UK with his family. But for the last 4 months, he's been living out of a hotel. Now, that's until a woman from Scotland got in contact offering them a home. Helga McFarlane has given a flat to the family whilst they settle in Aberdeen. And I'm delighted to say that Burhan Vesal joins me now from his new home. Hello, Burhan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So tell me a little bit about your time in Afghanistan when the Taliban took control.
It was 14 August that I received an email from Afghan Relocation Assistant Program, so for the relocating to the United Kingdom. I've just sent them my passports and IDs and birth certificates of my son and as well marriage certificates. On the 15th of August, when we woke up, the city was looking abnormal and nothing was looking good. So we were just shocked what's going to be happening. At the afternoon, just we heard that the government been collapsed. At night, we heard that Taliban entered the Kabul city, which is capital of Afghanistan. So it was really horrible for us, and I was just asking myself, what should I do right now? So I went to hiding to my parents' house because I was living separately with my family in a green zone area of Kabul. So after 5 to 6 days, I received another email from Afghan Relocation Assistant Program, which is ARAP. And I have been told to come to the airport. And when I went to the airport, there was crowded and thousands of people were standing at the outside of the gate, and there was no way crossing at least 2 to 3 checkpoints of Taliban. So I thought, what should I do then? Then I returned the first time, the second time like this, and the third time. So I told myself that I have to do something for myself and my family to escape from barbaric Taliban. So we went again and stand from 8:30 at the morning to 5 p.m. To the crowded area, and we managed to reach British military and call them the time an interpreter, and this is my document which I have with me. So luckily I was the one who managed to cross the border from the darkness to the light and went to airport, and British military helped me a lot to move me in a safe place. So one night we spent inside the airport, and for the next day we managed to board the airplane and military airplane to the Dubai, and from Dubai to the UK.
Now, you see, obviously what you were going through was absolute hell. So you decided to leave, and that's, and you're very lucky because a lot of people didn't make it out as safely as you. And obviously the next day there was the explosion as well. There was the bomb at the airport. So thank goodness you got out. Now you, when you came to the UK, what was the treatment like? And I know you ended up in a hotel. Tell me a bit more about that.
Luckily, we were managed to come to the UK when we entered here. So after entering to the UK, we gone to a quarantine hotel for 10 days. Then we have been moved to another hotel, a bridging hotel in central London. So at least we were there about 2 months, and we managed to admit my son in a school over there. But there was no home, so just uncertain situations. Then I have from London we have been moved to Crowley to another hotel, again another uncertain situation. So luckily, a kind-hearted woman, a free-hearted woman, a free-hand woman just find us and offered us a flat in Aberdeen, city of Scotland, and what should I say, that I'm the luckiest one beside the immigrants that I am currently in my new home.
How did this wonderful woman hear about you? Did she read something about you, or how did she actually get in touch with you?
She find me from the media, and she contacted me and told me that there is a offer for you. There is a flat for you in Aberdeen, City of Scotland. So, but Home Office was, I think, not in contact with him. So there was lots of paperwork done. Then after they managed to do the paperwork from the Council of Aberdeen, we've been accepted and we have been moved to here.
Think of it. Do you like Aberdeen? Is it nice?
It's a really nice city, like similar to Kabul city, and the weather is like, because in Kabul we have snow and here it is, yeah. But I love it. I love it.
You like the cold weather then? You like the cold?
Yeah.
Now you're in Aberdeen. Have you managed to get schools for your child, your son? And is it all? You're now sort of building a life for yourself. And are you working?
Not yet. I'm not working. I've been promised that on Monday my son will be admitted to his school, and my wife is a doctor, and we are in process to go to the job center for seeking new jobs and new opportunity for us and for my wife as well.
When you got the message from Helga, I think this is the name of the lady who took you in. What did you think? Did you think it was genuine? What was going through your mind?
I just saw the message and I was thinking how a woman can do this. Then I thought, let's chat with her. Then I chat with her. I saw that this is exactly she wants us to offer a help, and she is the one who can give us a shoulder. So I Googled Aberdeen City. I saw the Aberdeen City, which is familiar like Kabul and similar to Kabul, and we can live there, and my family is happy over there. So then we just in contact with her many times, and then luckily we managed to move from the bridging hotels to a new home in a nice city.
What would your message be then to people thinking about housing an Afghan refugee, but are perhaps slightly apprehensive?
I really demand from the UK government. They did a lot for the immigrants. They did a lot for Afghans. They bring us from a hell to a heaven. So I really want and demand from them, if it is possible, please relocate the immigrants that they are currently living in bridging hotels with uncertain situation to a new accommodation, and it will be very nice for their children future, for the immigrant children futures, and for their family, because they are currently in an uncertain situation.
Well, listen, Burham, it's been lovely talking to you. See, you're lovely, though. I would take you in if I could, but I had trouble even when I had my au pair. It would annoy me when she opened the fridge and I could hear the noise. I was thinking, she's eating the food. but listen, you're absolutely lovely. And your wife, you said she's a doctor. Well, we've got a huge shortage, so she'll definitely get a job pretty sharpish. Listen, thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you. That's Burham Vassal. He's a former British Army interpreter in Afghanistan. He was housed by a wonderful woman in Scotland, and he's there now, and he likes it, even the weather. Listen, after the break, we'll continue our Great British Debate. I'm asking you, would you give a refugee a home? First, it's your latest news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. Here are the latest headlines. The stepmother of Arthur Labinjo Hughes has been jailed for life for the 6-year-old's murder. 32-year-old Emma Tuston will serve a minimum of 29 years in prison for starving, poisoning and killing the little boy in June 2020. Arthur's father, 29-year-old Thomas Hughes, was sentenced to 21 years for manslaughter. Mr Justice Mark Wall QC said it was, without doubt, one of the most distressing and disturbing cases he'd ever had to deal with. Wales has confirmed its first case of the Omicron COVID variant. The Welsh Government say the case is in the Cardiff and Vale University Health Board area. Meanwhile, NHS England say the acceleration of delivering booster jabs will start no later than December the 13th. The World Health Organization has warned that the Omicron variant is very transmissible, but urged people not to panic. Speaking earlier, the WHO chief scientist said the majority of cases they'd investigated saw mild symptoms, but it's too early to rule it a weaker strain. One of the UK's most senior counter-terrorism officers has told GB News the public could play a vital role in preventing another terror attack. Scotland Yard's Deputy Assistant Commissioner Matt Twist is urging the public to be extra vigilant in the run-up to Christmas. After 2 attacks in a month, enhanced police patrols will be operating in town and city centres over the festive period. The Met Police says it is deeply sorry so many people faced unacceptable scenes of disorder after a damning report described the Euro 2020 final as a day of national shame. The independent review commissioned by the FA found there'd been a collective failure by all organisations involved in planning for the final. Around 2,000 ticketless fans forced their way into the National Stadium. I'll be back at 6 o'clock. Now back to Nana.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
It's fast approaching 37 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Now, back to the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking you, would you give a refugee a home? Now, you've heard from Berman Vassal. He's an Afghan refugee who's been offered a flat by a woman in Scotland after months in hotels with his family. Let's get my panel's thought. Abby, Tom, would you give a refugee a home? I'm going to start with you, Abby, because you're looking nonchalant.
Hasn't he been through enough? Not to be offered a home in Aberdeen. Sorry, anyone watching. No, to be fair, that's just a joke, obviously. I love Aberdeen. I've done many a comedy gig up in the Granite City. It's a stunning city. This is a really... I've been thinking about this a lot because my dad was... I used to go to the Soviet Union a lot as a kid because my dad was a spy. Sorry, diplomat. And
you've given it away now.
We're giving it away. Sorry, everyone, I have to kill you now. But he used to take in dissident, people that were fleeing the Soviet regime into our home in London.
Really?
So yes, and there were many,
you must have been
many
rich.
people. Not particularly, but
I thought spies got a lot of money.
Well, I don't know. He wasn't a spy.
Oh,
I've told you, don't give it out to everyone. Release the information. But so I've got a sort of now I'm naturally inclined to say yes, but I'm a widower. I'm a woman on my own. So if it was a woman or a very attractive young man, then I'd probably say say yes.
So no older people then. What about you, Tom?
No older people.
Well, at least we know Abby's selection criteria. Get filling in it on the website now, as I say. But look, the short answer is absolutely yes, I would. But as the father of 3 young kids, and obviously my partner, we just haven't got the room. That said, I've been very closely involved with this Afghan story since the summer, indeed before. I've been to Afghanistan 5 times. I've been an education advisor to the Afghan government. Malik and his family, I can say his name now actually because he's safely in Turkey, in Istanbul, with his extended family. So it wasn't the British that got him out, but we managed through an NGO. The Canadian government is now processing their asylum application. And I mean, just on a serious note, I mean, I do think that comparison and contrast with actually the whole debate here we're having about asylum seekers, refugees, so-called genuine refugees, what's going on across the channel. There is currently no legal route that refugees who've got out of Afghanistan, or indeed any other place in the world where they're fleeing persecution, can apply for British refugee status. Other countries like Canada do. So obviously all the debate is about people, frankly, who are trying to break into the country and follow that illegal route.
But he didn't come through that route.
He came through a safe and legal route.
But you just said there weren't any. But there was in this case. So there was a safe and legal route to come to this country, and we did the right thing and our duty. Yeah. But I have to be honest, back to the question of whether I could house a refugee. I'm afraid, and I don't mean to be hard of heart, but I have to be honest, no, I couldn't. And the reason I couldn't is because, like I said, I did have an au pair, and it was not good. I couldn't have others living there. I've got a young child, and then I've got an older daughter as well. And I just haven't got the room, frankly. And I'm not, I don't think I'm sort of the compatible type of character that could sit there with other people. But that's honestly. No. But if I had the room, I probably still wouldn't.
That's an honest answer.
Because it's an honest answer. I mean, I could do the, oh, yes, I would and everything. Then when it came down to it, actually, we've got Uncle Tom coming over to stay or whatever. But the reality and the truth of it is that I personally wouldn't. But I would do anything to help someone.
Yes.
So I would help in every other way. But I wouldn't take a refugee.
So it's temporary then, isn't it? I mean, I wouldn't.
Well, no, hang on. So it might be full. I mean, what you're saying it's temporary, so you're just deciding whether you would or you wouldn't.
Well, I'm saying, look, if I had the room, I wouldn't see it as a permanent arrangement. But what we do know actually about the 17,000 people that have been brought over from Kabul since the summer, a lot are staying in these temporary hotel accommodation. Meanwhile, we've got a lot of this sort of Airbnb type accommodation that's not being used. People have got second homes. I mean, it does make you wonder if the government had perhaps more of an incentive for those that have got the room, have got the second homes, have got, are renting out the Airbnb
if you've got
over
room,
the winter.
If I had another house or an apartment, and of course the government have, some scheme which would help me so that I could support someone in another house, then yes, but I also think we need to look at the people of this country who haven't got anywhere to live. I'm glad that we've got hotels to cater for people who've come from other countries. They must be taken care of.
Yeah.
But what about the people in this country?
I was just going to say, Nana, don't forget, we had the Iraq War. We've had Afghanistan, we've had various other things, and there are veterans on our streets now, homeless men, with their lives are shattered, PTSD, either their marriages have broken down, their families have not been able to cope. So my issue with it is, by all means, it's interesting. I'm not even sure if someone could live with me because I'm not vaccinated. That's the other thing.
Well, they might have to.
But you know what?
You're unvaccinated.
I would put my moral obligation before that. Yeah. I'm not sure. There's a lot of people bleeding hearts on the left. You notice who are like, oh, it's so terrible to talk about immigration. People die in the Channel, and all of a sudden they're going, oh, it's we must stop this, and it's like, well, make up your minds.
Because before
I tell you what, if you want to help people, you give them a home. There's plenty of people on the left with enormous houses in Hampstead, mostly. Yeah. So you give them a home.
But that is the other sort of dirty secret, isn't it, about the British housing market? People say we're not building enough homes. Liam Halligan here has written a brilliant book, Home Truths. We're building, 300,000 homes a year, but net migration still to the country, both legal and illegal, is running at 300,000 plus. So we're clearly not building enough homes for the people that need them. But equally, though, I don't go down the track of saying that we can't be generous to those who are fleeing persecution. And this country, over centuries, has been fantastic at taking people in. During the Second World War, 30-odd thousand people, Jewish refugees. We need more of that.
Well, of course we do. So let's hear what you've been saying, though, on Twitter and through email. Angela says, I married a refugee. I met and knew him for 5 years. See, there's hope, Abby. Before we got together, I was able to find out about him before welcoming him into my home. And he says the question you should ask, would you give a home earmarked for a couple living on minimum wage who have been on council house waiting lists for 5 years to a refugee instead? You don't pull homes out of the hat to take them off someone else. OK. Victor says, if I had the room, 100%, unfortunately, we live in a very small house. Even then, a veteran would be first in the queue. Mark says, yes, sure, why not? Luke says we can't even house our own population to a reasonable standard. They should be the priority. Well, you see, a lot of people saying the same thing, a lot of people agreeing with me as well, because I'd love to, but I know my personality probably wouldn't really work that well, but I'd do anything I could to help. I would do everything else, though, whatever I could do to help.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think? That's what they're saying.
Yeah, that's not surprising. I mean, the British public, I think it's unfair, to say, oh, the British public are not, as you quite rightly said, Tom. We have a history of people fleeing persecution, of giving them home and giving them comfort and sanctuary. So we mustn't disregard that, but we must also understand we've been through 20 months and we're still going through of the most horrific, taking away of liberties and people who are on low income.
Yeah, but
people are scrabbling. People are literally on the breadline.
I hear you, but I have to stop with the taking away of liberties.
Okay, taking away of liberties.
Some people would see that as a necessary requirement.
But, I think what I'm trying to say is we need to get our own house in order to excuse the.
But what about those who are coming? But what about those who fled persecution and now we have them in this country and you have space? If I had another house, I would potentially house someone in another house if there was some sort of government scheme that would assist me.
But it's got to be planned, isn't it? I mean, what Burhan's story showed is that where it's organised, where people are processed, sure, it was still in a bit of a hurry, those C-17s that we saw that were taking off at Kabul airport. But I think what does, and will obviously try the British public's patience, is when they see now what this year, 30,000 illegal migrants. Some will be genuine refugees. They will make their application. They will be granted permanent right to remain. They will, like Burhan, be given the opportunity to work. And that's really back to my kind of key point about where are the safe and legal routes that we are, as British people, helping those fleeing persecution come. Because it's hard to be, harder on the illegal migrants, I think, if we're not fulfilling our responsibilities to those that need our help.
Well, that's it. Well, so what do you think? Keep your thoughts coming. Now, we might be all fretting about catching COVID. Are you fretting about catching COVID? But there is actually another threat which hasn't gone away either, and that is the threat of a terrorist attack. So following 2 atrocities in recent weeks, the threat level currently stands at severe. Our Home Affairs and Security editor Mark White sent this report.
We're on the road with a team from Scotland Yard's Specialist Operations Division, a counter-terrorism patrol in the heart of central London.
Stevie, if you know, we're going to go down that little side road by the Trocadero.
They've been tasked with patrolling parts of the West End, on the lookout for anything suspicious.
Well, it's just a case of the fact that we can get further with the vehicle. You might see different things when you're out on foot, when we're out on the vehicle, but it's a whole package.
The deployment includes foot patrols.
Hello guys, how you doing? Yeah, good, thanks. Good, thank you.
With the terror threat level recently raised to severe, these patrols have taken on added significance. There are also plainclothes covert teams here, reporting back anything that seems out of place.
So as project servitor officers, we deploy in unpredictable fashion into areas where there's quite high footfall. As I say, I can't go into specific details on how we work due to security reasons, but as you see, you'll see uniformed officers, but we do have a range of other assets available to us.
It was the terrorist killing of Conservative MP Sir David Amess, followed by the bomb attack outside Liverpool Women's Hospital, that prompted security officials to raise the terror threat level. And so across the country, in the run-up to Christmas in particular, the public are being urged to be extra vigilant.
I mean, this is the first Christmas in a couple of years where lots of people are going to be together. There's lots of big events going on, and we want people to go and enjoy them. But we also know that the terrorist threat level has been raised to severe after the two awful attacks we've seen, one in Essex and one in Liverpool. And we just want the public to be vigilant. We mean that severe means an attack is highly likely, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't go about carrying on their normal business. What it means is that if you're worried about something, if you're suspicious about something, then tell us about it. And the message is very clear. By phoning us, by telling us there's something that doesn't feel right, you're not going to ruin somebody's life, but you may just save some.
In Manchester, the Christmas markets are highly popular. After a hiatus because of COVID, there is added enthusiasm this year. But an awareness too that crowded places like these are potential targets for terrorists.
I feel safe, but then it's a midweek day, so people are more spaced out. I think I'd probably not feel as safe if it was a weekend, if it was very crowded.
Definitely more vigilant. I tend to, I'm more aware of left baggage and things like that.
You've just got to crack on. You can't let these things slow you down.
Back in London's Leicester Square, another element of these patrols is about raising public awareness of the potential threats.
We're part of a security team based on Metropolitan Police from Charing Cross Police Station. When you're out today, if you see anything that does look suspicious, no matter what it is, please give us a call.
Right across the UK in mainly urban centres of population, there will be a noticeable increase in these police patrols. But authorities say, far from being alarmed, the public should be reassured by this enhanced security. With the terror threat level at severe, sadly, authorities know that it is only a matter of when, rather than if, there's another attack. And so the public, they say, have a potentially vital role in spotting anything that might prevent another tragedy. Mark White, GB News.
Well, it's time to end the show with our quick-fire debates. We pick some of the other standout stories from today and have a speedy debate about them. I've got my trusted buzzer here. Yes. And when I press it, I want silence, so these two need to shut up. That's my panel. Right, so Abby and Tom. OK, so first up, a woman has been reunited with her wedding ring that she lost gathering potatoes at her home in the Outer Hebrides in Scotland 50 years ago. Peggy McSween's ring was found by a fellow islander who used a metal detector to find it after hearing her story. So I'm going to ask the panel then. So what's the longest that you've lost something before you found it again? Tom?
I did lose my wedding ring after 6 months, and isn't that just a great advert for a metal detector? I'm going to ask for one for Christmas.
That's a bit boring. No, really. But you lost it after 6 months. What did your wife say?
She wasn't very happy about it, but it wasn't replaced.
So really? So how long ago was that then?
Oh, years ago.
So you've never ever had another wedding ring at all? You've gone without?
But then I don't like wearing jewellery. See, she buzzed me out. And then
Very
she had a conversation.
What are you doing? Getting out of you, doing the old journalist trick.
Just when you thought it was over, you sort of relaxed and
I'd
get the gold. Right, what do you think, Abby?
I'm trying to think what's the worst. I mean, I'm going to get serious. Sorry to be a bit serious, but I mean, as we were talking about bereavement week,
Yes.
my husband is my husband, I have got our wedding rings. I've got his wedding ring and mine in a little drawer, and my wedding dress, which thank God there was all our stuff was in storage and everything burnt. This is after he'd passed away, so I had a terrible nightmare of a year. But all the stuff that, thank God, the stuff that means a lot to me, I kept. So I've got everything. So my darling Terence Gibbons died 3 years ago on Sunday.
Oh, I'm sorry, dear.
So, no, I just wanted to mention him because I know he's up there going, Abs, behave yourself.
That's grief awareness.
And GB News, he'd love the fact that I'm here.
Oh, bless me, he's looking at you smiling, saying, you haven't lost me at all, though, I'm watching.
Oh, yeah.
Bless your heart. Right, let's move on to the Royal College of Midwives. They've apologised after it used the term postnatal people rather than women or mothers in its guidance for handling sleeping babies. It faced a fierce backlash, with one Twitter user describing it as virtue signalling to a woke agenda. Right, so is this more inclusive or just a step too far? What do you think? I'll start with you, Tom.
It's always a step too far. I mean, stories like this just drive me absolutely mad. You know, whether it's men with cervixes or
no, they haven't got
about
cervixes,
women
there's only
with
women.
front holes. I mean,
Who talked about them with that? Where did you get that from? I don't think.
I think it was from Andrew Doyle. I think I learned.
Andrew Doyle.
I mean, he's the one who
Bless
follows
him.
all these kind of woke phrases.
Yeah.
And I mean, I just can't keep up with them, to be honest. It's
I agree. It's like chest feeders. Are you joking?
Chest feeding, yes.
Chest feeding.
Yeah.
You know, and also people with cervixes. I mean, a cervix isn't a car that you buy and reverse. You go reverse your cervix into the drive.
That'd be interesting.
I mean, you know, it is part of.
That's it. Yeah, this is turning into a comedy
We're
night.
going
Isn't it?
to end up with a row from the trans people, so we'll stop now. The Royal College of Midwives stated this: "We would like to apologise that women are not mentioned in our recent safer sleeping guidance. This was a huge oversight on our part, especially as we are committed as an organisation to ensure that women are never erased from the narrative around pregnancy and birth. We have taken it down from our website whilst we revise and correct this omission." Interesting mistake, isn't it, really? Right, this is it. A makeup artist has taken to TikTok to complain about her guinea pig who ate her fringe. I knew you were wondering what I was going to say. She told followers that sometimes she sleeps with it out of its cage and it climbed onto her one night and gave her an unwanted haircut. Have you ever had a dodgy haircut? Abby, I have to start with you. You've had your hair cut recently.
Do you know what? No, usually I'm blow-dried. I'm very careful how I say that. Blow-dried on this show, but I've let my hair go into its natural. I get a little bit like Madonna from, the Dick Tracy. Is it Dick Tracy?
Lovely.
I have actually. I once cut my own hair during lockdown. I cut my own hair. It was literally like this.
Did that next.
Well, middle-aged, I'm just glad to have what hair I've got. You know, Grecian 2000 or not.
You've got a lovely head of hair.
I did have a perm in the 80s, but that's a whole
I'd
story.
love to see that. You're going to have to bring a picture of that in.
I'm bringing back memories for him. Aye.
But back to the guinea pig. Now I know what my daughter scribbled away in her room with her smartphone on TikTok. That's what she's watching.
Enough. Yes, well, I had a bad haircut one time. It was this. I stayed at my friend's house. She had a chinchilla. And the chinchilla made its way into my plaits and started to gnaw them off. It's true. And I woke up and there was like these plaits either side. I thought, how did they break off?
A chinchilla?
A chinchilla. She had a chinchilla in her house. Penny, if you're watching, you did have a chinchilla. Remember that? Well, listen, we are nearly at the end of the show, but there's just time to announce the final results of our poll. We've been asking, following growing concern about rising COVID rates, should Christmas parties be cancelled? 91% of you said no. Wow, that means 9% of you said, yes, they should be. Sad people. I'm joking. Listen, thank you so much to our wonderful panel, Abby Roberts and also Tom Buick, for joining me today. And thank you to you for your company at home. I'll be back tomorrow, Saturday at 4. But first, it's your latest weather. Enjoy.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Hello, this weekend is looking fairly changeable, quite a chilly feel to things, especially in the wind, and there will be some rain for many of us. But having said that, it does look like an improving picture into Sunday. Now, for the rest of today, we have these bands of rain just skirting southern counties of England. So those will bring showery outbreaks of rain, quite a lot of cloud, some drizzle or more persistent rain at times here. Meanwhile, another weather front waiting in the wings, and this will bring a mixture of clearer skies, but also some heavy and quite frequent showers. And those could turn a little bit wintry over the higher ground of the north. So all in all, there will be quite a lot of rain around through this evening and overnight, and a lot of cloud. That will help keep temperatures up somewhat, so not falling too low. We could just see a touch of frost where skies clear later in the night across more western parts of the country. But for Saturday, quite a cloudy start for many. There will be some breaks in the cloud, allowing a little sunshine to break through here and there. And we have some more persistent rain. Again, this could turn wintry, particularly over higher ground in the north, maybe occasionally to lower levels, but it's unlikely to settle. What we will notice about the feel of the weather tomorrow is how cold it will be in comparison with today, particularly in that brisk northwesterly wind, which will really take the edge off the temperatures. Now, we do see further outbreaks of showery rain through Saturday evening and overnight, but it continues to track its way eastwards. Still a good deal of cloud around, so again, not a particularly cold night for many of us, although with clearer skies in the north and west, there will be some frost here come Sunday morning. And for Sunday itself, as I mentioned, it is generally an improving picture. We will still see further Blustery showers across more eastern areas, but drier and brighter skies developing elsewhere. And into next week, it turns unsettled again with some windy conditions on Tuesday.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Neil Oliver. You can join me live every Saturday evening for opinions and discussions about the week's top stories. There's also a smattering of history and archaeology and features that define our great British Isles. You'll hear my thoughts unfiltered, as well as those of my guests, and we don't always agree. And we want to